My marriage was a real mistake. In fact, it was the worst mistake of my life. The main problem wasn't my wife, she was fine. My problem was her mother, a real dragon who hated me more than anything else in the world and never missed an opportunity to do me a disservice. Sure, I wasn't a really nice guy, not at all, but I wasn't a bad guy either. There are good and bad sides to every person. Nobody's perfect. I never pretended to be a saint, and truth be told, I was involved in a few less than honorable cases, but I never went to jail for anything. I came very close to doing so once, but my friend Nicholas, who was in law school at the time, saved me. Nicholas and I have been friends since high school. He's a short guy with glasses, and he was always more interested in reading books than teasing girls with the rest of us. When a few boys at school chose him as the victim of their bullying, I felt sorry for him and told them I'd beat the crap out of anyone who dared to hurt Nicholas. Two of them did, and I kept my word. Today, as I start writing this story, I am 32 years old. I am a self-employed driller, meaning I drill boreholes about 100 meters deep for heat pipes, and I make a pretty good living. I have been married to Lizette for nearly 6 years, and we have a son who was born just 5 months after we were married. We have a nice house in a small Scandinavian town, and we could be the most ordinary family. But we aren't because of her mother, the dragon who hates me so much for getting her daughter pregnant while she had a boyfriend of her mother's choice. I have to say that I have lost many battles, but hopefully I will come out victorious in the last round. It all started on a summer night's eve about 6 years ago. Midsummer Night is the shortest night of the year, and here in Scandinavia it has been celebrated as a sacred night since ancient times when the Vikings ruled here. It is a romantic night with midnight sun in the north and only a few hours of soft twilight in the south. There are loud parties going on everywhere. At the time I was engaged to a lovely girl called Lottie, and we had planned to move in together on the 1st of August, when I was promised a 2-bedroom flat in exchange for the 2 rooms I had now. But now, Lottie and I were arguing about going to her cousin's wedding on Midsummer's Eve. I was not invited with her, which was a serious breach of etiquette, for engaged couples are considered equal spouses and should always be invited together. I was sure that other engaged people were not invited as singles. Lottie also realized that it was a humiliation for me because of my old reputation as a bad boy. I had never done anything bad to my girlfriend or her cousin, whom I didn't even know. Lottie agreed that I was right, but refused to pick me for this wonderful evening and not stay home after the wedding. If the damn wedding was any other weekend, I would have happily stayed away. And even if I had been invited, I would have done my best to find an excuse not to go. I didn't blame my cousin. She chose her own guests and skipped those she didn't like. I blamed Lottie for accepting such a humiliating invitation in the middle of summer, on the most important day of the year. We began to quarrel, and when she left my flat in anger on the morning of Midsummer's Eve, our engagement was broken off. I told her that if her damn cousin was more important than her boyfriend, she could stay there forever because I didn't want her back. An hour later, I regretted losing her, and I called her mobile several times during the day, but it was switched off. Lottie and I were also invited to a big party at a friend's cottage. I went there alone and had a great time as the new bachelor. At the party, I danced a few times with a rather nice girl called Lizette, who was there with her wimpy alcoholic fiancé. I didn't know her very well at the time, but I found her quite attractive. When her boyfriend had too much to drink, I offered to help her dump him in the back of his car. Lizette and I returned to the party briefly, and then took a walk in the romantic twilight to a nearby lake. We walked out onto a small pier, sat down, and started hugging each other tightly. I think she was impressed with my old and unfaithful reputation as a bad boy. No one can explain why, as a rule, beautiful women are attracted to bad boys. Apparently, it's always been that way because there's an old saying, "Naughty boys sleep with pretty girls." She was just in love with me and didn't mind when we went to the guest room she and her boyfriend had rented for the night. Then we fell asleep and didn't wake up until the next morning when her boyfriend screamed like crazy upon discovering Lizette and me. Lizette's boyfriend threw his wedding ring at her, which obviously meant he dumped her immediately. When my own now ex-girlfriend Lottie came back from the wedding, she rang me and said she was sorry about the whole trip, and I was right as she was the only invited guest without her lover, which really humiliated her and ruined the whole wedding for her. She tried to call me several times on Midsummer's Eve to apologize, which I verified later when I checked the incoming messages on my mobile phone. She begged me to meet with her and talk about our situation, to which I agreed. But when she called me again an hour later after hearing about me having fun with Lizette, she was furious and screamed that she was glad our engagement was a thing of the past. At first I didn't care, but after a fortnight I called her several times, expecting her to calm down. Each time I got the same answer and a suggestion to go camping in a hot place. I even called Lizette a few times, but she refused to meet me and I had almost forgotten about her when she rang my doorbell 2 months later. She had a concerned look on her face and wanted to talk to me. I asked her to come in. She got straight to the point. "I'm pregnant and you're the father." Then she started crying. We talked for several hours and she told me that I was the first and only man who had ever had intercourse with her. She was going to keep the baby and asked me if I was man enough to share the consequences of what we had done with her. What could I possibly answer? Even I realized that two parents were the best thing for a child and agreed to give our relationship a fair try. Lizette was a beautiful, sweet, and soft girl with a reputation as a family girl. Not as sweet as Lottie, but not a bad choice for a wife. We decided to get married as soon as possible. Of course, love is an important part of marriage, and neither of us could deny that there was hot love during our holy night. We both believed it would flare up between us again when we had a child. Lizette spent the night with me. She told me she was very happy. I had made my decision and was going to fulfill it in the best possible way. The next day, we traveled together to her parents to tell them the news. It was both the first and the last time I visited her parents' house. Her mother turned my visit into a real fuss. Instead of trying to make the best of the circumstances, she started shouting at me, calling me a damned bully who had soiled her innocent daughter. She threatened to sue me and promised to punish me in every way possible. Her father was obviously a pathetic wimp who let the dragon spit fire, without saying a word about it. Not the best relatives in town. Her parents were second-generation owners of the family print shop, and her mother was a formidable boss. Their business had once been the leading print shop in the entire region, but now it was headed for collapse. The European Union, which at the time comprised 15 countries, as an internal market meant stiff competition with plenty of new printing capacity available at low prices for the most important customers. In addition, new countries such as Poland and Hungary, with good printing facilities, were close to joining the EU and were already doing business successfully with the old members. Lizette's family had made good profits before, but they hadn't invested much in the latest equipment and were losing customers, leading to red numbers. I was unemployed at the time, and Lizette's mother, seeing an opportunity to take control of me, demanded that I start working in the print shop for a meager wage. I refused and preferred to live on unemployment benefit, which gave me more money than what she was offering. Since I had an unlimited amount of free time, I even worked part-time for a fellow driller. Lizette's mother started our vendetta by complaining to the unemployment office that I refused to accept the job offered, which was against the rules. She got nothing for it. She then had a lawyer draw up a prenuptial agreement whereby I had no rights to anything if things got bad between Lizette and me, which was what her mother wanted. I asked Nicholas to rewrite the contract to make it fairer, and Lizette signed it without saying anything to her mother. 2 months later, Lizette and I were married in the town hall. It was a simple ceremony with 2 witnesses, Nicholas and Lizette's best friend. 5 months later, we had a wonderful baby boy. Our relationship gradually grew into something that could be considered true love, and the next 2.5 years were the happiest, very happy years of our marriage. A few months after we were married, I had the opportunity to buy a rock drilling business on favorable terms. Its owner signed up for a beginner's square dancing class and met a wonderful woman there. She was a doctor with a temporary job at a local hospital, and when she was offered a very well-paying job in northern Norway, she made an offer to the driller, who accepted and sold his business to me. Since both the doctor and the driller signed a personal guarantee for me, I had no problem getting the necessary amount of money from the bank. Then when our boy turned 2.5 and we put him in kindergarten, the problems began. Lizette started working at the print shop again, and since she was expected to be the next owner and boss, her nasty mother's influence increased. In good times, Lizette's greedy mother bought stock in large sums and trusted her broker because her stock was going up at a time when almost everything was going up. But when times got tough, the broker started to perform poorly, causing her to lose a lot of money before she could stop him. At the same time, I got inside information from Nicholas, who was now a lawyer, about an unexpected big boom in one of the companies, bought shares, and made excellent money on the opportunity. I couldn't resist the temptation to punish Lizette's mother and brag to Lizette that thanks to a new computer analysis program, I had made a very large profit and there was more to come. I told her to go to our garage to get a surprise car. It was a nearly new Toyota Yaris that I had bought at a bargain price for Lizette to use as her shopping car. Of course, she told her mother about it, who was jealous of me, and told Lizette to find out about my next purchase. I asked Nicholas to find some real junk stocks and put together a very complicated-looking nonsense program in Excel that showed a very good expected return on Mega X shares. I'm sure Lizette got into my laptop and told her mother, who made a large investment just before the junk stocks started sinking like a stone. One evening, Lizette asked me, "Did you lose money on Mega X stock?" "No, I bought some when they were at their lows and sold all of them when they were at their peaks. That's good for us. Why do you ask?" It's come to my attention that some people have lost a lot of money on them. Gambling on the stock market is always a risky business. I had won an important battle with her mother, but she suspected that my bad advice had been done on purpose, and rumors were flying around town that she intended to intensify her efforts to get me into trouble. There was nothing to worry about. For all this time, she had been doing her best. She had bet her friends that she would persuade her daughter to make me a cuckold, divorced and dispossessed before our boy even went to school. So she always invited the single young sons of her friends and business acquaintances to her parties, hoping one of them would seduce Lizette. Many of them were well-educated, well-mannered. She had once had a boyfriend, and why should it be any different now? Especially after her mother brainwashed her for a long time into leaving me. Her mother probably still thought Lizette would get most of my assets to invest in the print shop when I left her, having received more humiliation than I could bear. Hate, revenge, and money were good reasons for her mother to play foul play against me. I told Lizette that I knew about the bet, and if her mother managed to find a gigolo to sleep with her, she would be kicked out immediately. Lizette got angry and screamed, "What the hell do you think of me? Don't you think I know about this damn bet and I'll be mad as hell if anyone tries anything?" Good call, keep it, and we'll have no reason to discuss the matter further. When Lizette started working full-time, our family life began to sink lower and lower. I wanted us to have another child, but Lizette refused. Our life, which had been on a good and sometimes very good level while she stayed home with the baby, became a chore. I didn't complain much at first because Lizette was working hard to survive in a printing business that her mother with her outdated manners couldn't stop from losing customers. My business was doing so well that I offered Lizette to work for me instead of her mother, but she refused. With oil prices rising, a thermal heating system was a very worthwhile investment, which meant very good business for me. Although I had a lot to do, I tried to help Lizette around the house as much as possible. Our marriage was not the best, but for many years after she went back to work, it remained at an acceptable level. We had good moments from time to time. I really did my best, trying to persuade her to quit her now very poorly paid job and free herself from her mother's bad influence. But things went in the opposite direction. Lizette started taking the baby with her and spending more weekends at her parents' cottage than at home. After a while, I got fed up with it and we had our first real fight. She realized her mother had taken her too far and agreed to spend more time at home, but it was an empty, soon-to-be-forgotten promise. Just 3 months after our serious quarrel, she was back to her addiction, which meant that our social life with friends was minimized. Of course, I was none the wiser and realized that now, after years of fruitless attempts, her mother had finally succeeded in getting us to distance ourselves from each other. Our son told me about some Tommy kissing Mum when they got home from their last weekend at her mother's house. It was no surprise, it was bound to happen sooner or later, but now I knew for sure the shit had hit the fan. I realized that our marriage was close to being history, despite my best efforts to be a good husband. Of course, I was saddened by my failure, but to my great surprise, a sense of immense relief began to grow within me. I could look forward to a future without a nasty mother-in-law who tried her best to ruin my life. In recent years, Lizette, to my growing frustration, had always chosen her mother's side, so I didn't care if she chose her mother in her final decision. However, I felt it was my duty to give her one last honest chance to be a good wife again and save the marriage if she was interested. She got her chance the following Friday. In the evening, Lizette told me as usual that she was sorry but that she had to go to her mother's on Saturday morning and would be back sometime on Sunday, which probably meant evening. I decided it was time to let her make the final choice herself. Frankly, I didn't care what she did anymore. But I felt sorry for our son and decided to suggest that she change her weekend plans and save our marriage, so I replied, "Please don't go. You were there last weekend. Why don't you stay home so our family can do something together? We could invite some friends over and have a barbecue. It's been a while since we've done anything like that." She was surprised and replied, "I promised my mom I'd be there to help her with her friends." Visit your friends. Why are they so much more important to you than our own friends? Or do you mean one special male friend? Who the hell is this Tommy who seems to be spending all weekend with you? Will he be there? When I mentioned Tommy, there was surprise and confusion in her eyes for a second. Then she replied, "He's an old friend of our family and helps my mum, and sometimes me, sort out some of the EU rules. He's not my friend, so I don't know if my mum invited him." "How old is he?" "I think he's 30. And he's a handsome bachelor, I presume?" "No, he's married, but his wife is on a 3-month temporary job with the United Nations Administration in Kosovo, so he can help his mother on weekends." Her explanation about helping with the complicated rules of the European Union sounded reasonable. But why would a man his age want to spend the weekend with such a greedy old dragon? "And what is your relationship with this Tommy? It sounds like you'd rather spend the weekend with him than your husband." Again, I noticed the split second of fear in her eyes before she replied, "Strictly business, of course. What the hell do you think of me?" "I don't know anymore. You cheated on your boyfriend when you and I met. Who says you won't cheat again?" "Don't insult me. Things were different. I was young and fell in love with you, and you should know that I still love you." "You say that, but let's be clear about our relationship today. You have very strange ways of showing what you call love these days. Really, it's nothing to brag about. Our marriage is a parody of a real marriage. Our so-called sex life is almost non-existent. You'd rather leave your husband and spend weekends with this Tommy. And yet you keep saying you love me. But I can't understand how the hell you can think I'd believe such rubbish after what you do to me. I'm completely fed up with your bloody mum and her vile antics in our family, and I'm prepared to offer you fair divorce terms so you can do whatever you want with your sweet Tommy." She hadn't expected a divorce offer, and her face took on an ashy gray hue as she screamed, "Divorce? Are you serious? You can't ask for a divorce because I want to see my mother. Are you out of your mind? That's not a reason for a divorce." "No, it isn't. But I don't see any good reason why you have to see her from morning to night 7 days a week, every week. If your own family still means something to you, please skip Tommy and stay home for the weekend so we can talk about our problems and try to find a solution before it's too late. Please do that if you still love me like you say you do." "Of course I love you, but I promised Mum I would go and I need to go. I wish I could stay with you, but please be patient with me, and I promise you will be well rewarded. Have you forgotten that next Friday is Midsummer's Eve and we'll be together all day? And in July we'll spend a whole week together 24 hours a day at the cottage. What a favor. At the end of next month I get a whole week together with my beautiful, beloved wife. Now that's a gift from heaven. And may I assume that your graciousness to me on Midsummer's Eve is due to circumstances such as the fact that Tommy will be somewhere else during the holiday? Perhaps he's going on holiday with his wife and won't have time for you. Poor you. Or do you still remember that I left Lottie because she left me on Midsummer's Eve?" Now she was sobbing. "You're not funny. You're pathetic. You think it's funny to be married to you? I must say, you have a strange way of showing your love. Okay, Lisette. I know I can't stop you from dating this weakling because he's more important to you than your family, but you have to take the baby with you because tomorrow I'll be servicing drilling equipment and won't be able to take care of him at the same time." Now she was truly angry and screamed, "You're accusing me of cheating, treating me like a whore. Mum's right, you're a real bastard." She then started crying loudly. At this point, I dropped my hands and realized that there was something between her and this Tommy, but I didn't think any more about it. There was little left of our marriage, perhaps nothing at all. However, I made one last attempt to save it. The only reason I didn't leave her at once and tell her that she must leave our home for good was that I would get much better terms for a divorce if I caught her cheating. I saw no reason to argue further with Lizette and decided that it would be useful to get away from the house for an hour or two. I felt like having a large drink of whiskey, and as I never liked to drink alone, I went to my favorite pub, which was probably one of the best decisions of my life. After having a drink at the bar, I noticed Mona, a friend of my ex-girlfriend Lottie, sitting in a booth with her husband. I approached them and asked if she knew how Lottie's life was going now. She replied, "Don't you know she's back in town? She divorced Sven, bought a small house here and moved in about a fortnight ago. She's been asking about you. Why don't you call her and talk to her directly instead of through me?" Mona gave me Lottie's phone number, and I decided to call her straight away. Sure, she might ask me to get the hell out and stay put, but I thought, whoever dares wins. So I rang her, and she answered, "Lottie. Hi, I'm Michael, ex-boyfriend if you remember me. Mona told me you were back in town and I just wanted to welcome you back." The crucial moment had come. How would she take my call? To my great joy, she was happy to hear from me and we had a long and pleasant conversation. She even accepted my invitation to have lunch on Saturday. My spirits lifted after that, and I spent the rest of the evening with Mona and her husband. To my relief, Lizette pretended to be asleep when I got home, and I was asleep when she left for her mother's on Saturday morning. I did a bit of work on the rig in the morning, and at 1 o'clock stood waiting for Lottie outside the restaurant I had suggested for our lunch. I can't deny that I had almost the same feelings I had on my first date with her almost 8 years ago. When I waited 15 minutes and Lottie still wasn't there, I began to wonder if she would even come. But then she came. She was still a very beautiful woman, and now even more feminine in some ways than when I had seen her a few years ago. With her was her little daughter Jennifer. When she hugged me, I immediately felt a strong desire for her. She noticed this and was almost frightened, but calmed down when I stopped trying to be anything other than a friend. We had a very pleasant lunch and afterwards decided to go for a walk in a nearby park. During the walk, she asked me out of the blue, "What was your real reason for wanting to see me again?" "Faith, hope, and charity." A confused expression appeared on her face, whereupon she asked me, "Do you mind if I tell you something I've wanted to say for years?" I said, "Okay, go ahead." She told me, "I've made 3 big mistakes in my life. Going to that damn wedding was my first big mistake." You were right. I was humiliated as hell when the host tried to force me and the groom's arsehole brother to do things together all the time. When the groom asked me if I had feelings for his brother, I got pissed and asked him to go to hell and take his brother with him. Then I left the party. I didn't invite them to my and Sven's wedding, which really pissed them off. I thought you would forgive me and accept me back when I got home. But then Lizette's boyfriend called and said you took Lizette's cherry that she was saving for their wedding night. I was still in love with you and pissed off, made a second big mistake by refusing to talk to you when you called me. I only got together with Sven to punish you and intended to leave him and get you back. But then Lizette got pregnant, and it ruined everything. I admired you for taking care of her, but I cried many nights because I had done such a foolish thing and lost you. Then I married Sven, which was my third big mistake. If I hadn't been such a stupid idiot, you and I could have married. I replied, I made a grave mistake too when I seduced Lizette on that midsummer's eve. Of course, you and I had broken up and I was free to do whatever I wanted, but I should have used common sense and tried to win you back before moving on. Believe me, I really regretted it many times. But it's never too late to try again, is it? She was completely surprised. What did you say? Lizette and I are having problems, serious problems. I know she's cheating on me, but I don't have any proof yet. Last night, before going to the pub to meet Mona, I asked her to stay at home for the weekend rather than go to her mum and her lover's house, but she decided to go. I've decided it's over between us. I'm going to divorce her as soon as I get the proof I need, and if I can't get it, I'll do it within a month anyway. Oh my God, I thought you two were happy. We were very happy. You know the old saying, if you can't get the girl you love, love the girl you have? It worked out for us. After a while, I fell in love with her really hard. Real true love, but it's over now. What about you? Are you seeing anyone? She looked me straight in the eyes and replied, Yes, I met a handsome man online, but we haven't met in real life yet. We'll have our first lunch date tomorrow. So I'm late for the date? However, I would like to apply to be some sort of replacement for this lucky guy, just in case he's not the prince of your dreams. What do you say? She kept her eyes on me and was silent for a few seconds before replying, Isn't this date a real date for you? I could only reply, Seeing you tonight is the best thing I've done in a long time, but I'm selfish enough to want to see you more. Maybe even more than just a friend. She shook her head. No, I don't think it's a good decision to have you as some sort of replacement, not at all. Then, noticing the disappointment in my eyes, she continued, You were my first choice, And if you are serious and promise to be honest with me, I don't need any substitutes and I will cancel my date. Today is my lucky day. Please remember that I never cheated on you when we were engaged. You left me, and I was lonely when I met Lizette. I won't cheat on her before we break up. But you and I have kids almost the same age, and we can start being friends. That is, if you want to. I have rented a nice summer house on the coast for the third week of July, and I can promise you that before then, Lizette and I will be separated in different directions. In the evening, Lottie invited me to dinner at her house, and we began to make plans for the coming weeks. Jennifer and I were already good friends, and she had no ill feelings about her mother having a boyfriend. I spent the night in Lottie's spare room, and on Sunday we traveled to the coast. Lizette came home late on Sunday night, and we didn't speak for a long time before we went to bed. The next week passed in silence. She was obviously in a very bad mood after I suggested she get a divorce. The following Friday was Midsummer's Eve. Lottie and Jennifer spent it with Lottie's parents. Lizette and I were invited to spend the evening at a neighbor's house where several families with children of various ages had gathered. We spent most of the afternoon playing with the children. Then, in the evening, we adults played fun games and danced, but I hardly talked to Lizette or danced a single dance with her. She usually pretended to be a good, loving wife when we went out, but now neither she nor I cared that everyone could see how we had grown cold to each other. On Midsummer's Day, she went to her mother's house but didn't stay the night, probably because Tommy wasn't there. Lottie invited me to her parents' house and I spent a few hours there. They wished Lottie and me luck in our new relationship. The week after Midsummer passed with a chill in the relationship between Lizette and me. We were polite and correct with each other, but neither of us showed the slightest sign of affection. The following weekend, Lizette and our son went on a 3-day bus tour with her parents to Legoland, the famous children's amusement park, and after that she was going on her annual 2-day visit to her cousin. I was happy that I was able to spend 4 nights at Lottie's house. Of course, both Lottie and I wanted to get down to business as soon as possible, but in case Lizette intended to file for divorce, it would be advantageous to be the faithful party, so we decided to wait. Lottie, her friend, and I had a pleasant time together while Lizette was away. Lottie and I discovered that we still really enjoyed each other's company. True love. During the summer, Lizette and I were usually very busy at work, so we decided to spend only 2 weeks of our holiday, and only one, the last one, together in a summer house I rented on the coast. Instead of our usual summer holiday, we were going to go to Thailand for a fortnight in November. These plans had been made before Tommy had burst into her life, but in the present circumstances, I no longer had any intention of going anywhere with Lizette. Instead, I had promised Lottie that I would leave Lizette before the start of this week, and she had agreed to spend it with me at the summer house, and I intended to honor my promise. I think Lizette has finally realized that she has created far more serious problems in our marriage than she intended, and has started trying to pretend to be a good wife again. Much to my surprise, she called me all 4 nights while she was away, and told me how much she missed me. She had never called me before during all those weekends she spent at her parents' house. Every time she called me, I wanted to talk to my son. On the second day of their trip to Legoland, I asked him a few short and simple questions, all of which he answered yes to. One of those questions was, "Is Tommy with you?" And the answer was yes. I don't think any of the adults noticed this. I assume the reason for her call was guilt over taking Tommy with her. And when they got home, I got further proof from my boy when they stayed home one night between the 2 trips. He asked me if it was true that nasty wolves could come into our house and eat him. I asked him, "Who told you such a nasty story?" "Grandma." "Why did Grandma tell you such a nasty lie? What did you do to her?" "Nothing yet, but we have a secret, and if I tell you about it, the wolves will come and eat me." I tried to be sly and told him, "What secret? The fact that Tommy was with you and Mum is not some real secret. Your mum told me that she and Tommy lived in one room and you and Grandma slept in another." "You knew my secret." "Yes, I did. But a secret is a secret. There are no wolves, of course, but promise me you won't tell Mum we talked about your secret." Lizette let a damn dragon threaten my boy. She would pay for it. My next step was to call Nicholas, voice my concerns, and cancel the visit. Then I spoke to Lottie and my friend Dan, who agreed to help me. Entertaining a married woman in her marital bed tends to give him a sense of his own superiority over his horny husband. I was counting on Tommy not being able to resist the lure of such pleasure when I was on holiday, So I put an expensive little wireless TV camera in our bedroom with a receiver connected to video from an extra long playing cassette tape hidden in the garage. The camera was connected to a motion sensor and worked even in almost total darkness. I had already tested it several times with good results, so it was ready to go. In my company-owned Nissan King cab, I kept new house locks and cardboard boxes to pack Lizette's clothes and belongings in when it was time for her to move out of my house. After 2 agonizing days at home, with Lizette now pretending to be a caring wife, I packed clothes for myself and our boy for a week's holiday, and on Saturday morning we left as planned. Lizette told me that she was sorry that she would have to stay home and work that week and would miss us very much. I didn't kiss her goodbye, but I promised to call her at least once a day. She even stood in the driveway and waved to us as we drove away. I felt sorry that the woman I loved so much had turned into such a lying whore. But instead of driving to Nicholas's cottage, I went to Lottie's garage where I hid my car. Nicholas and his wife were aware of my problems and agreed to pretend I was there, but to come out at the same moment if Lizette called them. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Lottie drove past my house but saw nothing unusual there. At 8 o'clock, she went on another excursion, and when she came back, she told me that this time she had seen a metallic silver Volvo XC90 in my driveway. Usually, people come to visit friends and relatives in the summer, so no neighbor would be bothered by a strange car in someone's driveway at this time. At 11 o'clock, I took Lottie's car out for a tour, and the Volvo was still there. At 1 o'clock, I rode Lottie's bike there, snuck into my garage, and switched on the monitor. Bingo! Exactly what I wanted to see. Lizette and a man coming out of the bathroom. Now that I knew I had all the proof I needed to get a divorce on my terms, I was starting to feel a little better about this crazy situation. Lizette was not stupid, not at all. So I was a little surprised at how clumsily she was deceiving me. It was like she wanted to get caught and made it easy for me. First, she took Tommy with her on holiday, and then she let her nasty mum threaten our son with wolves. Who knows, maybe she wanted to be abandoned, and Tommy had to take care of her? I waited until they were asleep and watched them on the monitor before proceeding with my plan. They lay down on the bed, and Lizette said to him, "Let's get some sleep so we can be in good shape." He replied, "I'm going to miss you so much that every weekend without you will be terribly painful, even when my wife is home. Why don't we see each other at least once a month in the future?" Because my marriage is in a much worse crisis than I could have anticipated. Michael is still so angry about my weekend with you that he didn't even bother to kiss me goodbye when he left for a week. I made the terrible mistake of not staying home that damn weekend when he begged me to. My marriage has been a mess ever since. You're a wonderful lover, but I want my husband and I to have a good life again. It's too late for that, you damn whore, I said to myself before Tommy answered. You shouldn't regret anything that weekend. I had a good time, and you have to agree that once a month in the future, we'll have something to look forward to. A slight irritation could be heard in her voice, and she was undoubtedly beginning to feel remorseful when she replied, "No, Tommy, when you left after breakfast, our wonderful love story became history, and I turned into a good, faithful, loving wife who does everything, I mean everything, to win her husband's love again. But why think about that now? Until then, I'm still only yours. Be a good boy and don't waste a minute of our good time." I didn't hear his reply, but obviously he couldn't entertain her further without getting a few hours rest, and after a while they both fell asleep. I pressed a button on my mobile phone. My friend Dan woke up after a few beeps, and I told him, "I've got bingo. Are you ready to play?" He promised to be within 15 minutes. I could take care of Tommy in my bed by myself. The main reason I wanted my friend present was that he could testify that I had used no force on either Tommy or Lizette. If I had gone there alone, I'm sure her mother would have found some lawyer who would have made up a nasty story and sued me for being rude. Another good reason was that Dan owned a very good video camera and loved to use it. He was often hired to shoot weddings, and I needed close-ups that I didn't have on my own camera. Dan arrived as promised. We had a short briefing and then snuck into my house. The door to the bedroom was closed. I opened it a few centimeters and saw that they were both asleep under the duvet, very close together. Getting the camera equipment ready, Dan nodded, and I said, "Let's do it." I opened the door, Dan switched on a bright battery-powered halogen lamp and started filming. I walked over to the bed, pulled back the duvet without waking them, and let Dan film for at least 5 seconds before calling out, "What the hell is that?" They woke up in complete surprise. It took a few seconds before they realized what was happening, and while their eyes adjusted to the harsh light. Then Lizette recognized me and started screaming, "No, no, 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 no." I picked up the camera and told Dan to lead a naked Tommy out of my house. Dan grabbed Tommy firmly by the hair and dragged him off the bed towards the bedroom exit. There was noise and shouting, but I was in the bedroom and couldn't see what happened. After a while, Dan came back in and started looking for Tommy's keys. He found them in his trousers, went outside, and threw them on the driveway. Then we heard him drive off. Meanwhile, Lizette stopped screaming and started crying. I think she realized her game was over because she didn't make any silly attempts to explain what had happened. I told her, "You have dissolved our marriage. Get dressed and get out of my house. You don't have a car anymore, so Dan will call a taxi for you. Tomorrow, there will be new locks on the doors. I'll pack your things in cardboard boxes and you can pick them up tomorrow afternoon." She started shouting at me, "You can't do that. You have no right to do such a nasty thing to your wife. I will never accept that. I don't care what you do or don't do. Please read our prenuptial agreement. A copy of it is kept in your personal bank safe. You are leaving this house. Please don't do this to me. Please calm down and let us talk. Sure, we can talk tomorrow. Come here tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get your things and share everything we own together. Come alone. Remember, your parents are not allowed to stick their dirty feet on my property." The taxi arrived, and she had to wait 10 minutes before she was ready to go. Dan went home to bed, and I rang Lottie to inform her that I had caught Lizette with a man called Tommy in the marital bed, which meant that my marriage was over. But I wanted to stay in the house until I changed the locks. The new locks were already stored in my king cab. I won the battle again, but felt only sadness about my broken marriage and how it ended. I couldn't sleep, so I went to the garage, got the videotape, put it in the VCR, rewound it, and pressed the button. That's pretty much what happened. They were having fun. Then the screen went blank for a long time until it showed what I had already seen the night before. And then when Dan and I entered the room, their awakening. I was still too upset to sleep, so I started pulling Lizette's clothes out of cupboards and drawers and folding them in the living room. At 9 in the morning, Lottie and the kids arrived at my house with breakfast in a basket. Digging around in Tommy's wallet, I found his wife's phone number in Kosovo, rang her, and told her I'd found Tommy and his wife in my bed and filmed it. She was furious but asked me to send the pictures to her email, which I promised to do after I edited a copy of the video to show Lizette if she had any objections to my terms. I changed the locks, packed Lizette's things in perfect order, and wrote the contents on the outside of each box. I felt no need to retaliate by soiling or destroying her things. I then took a chainsaw and cut our almost new and very expensive marital bed into small pieces, which I then threw in a pile in the driveway. Lottie and the kids even brought me lunch so I could take a break from my work. Then, at 4 o'clock, a pale Lizette arrived alone in an old Ford Transit from the print shop. Before entering, she took a long look at the pile that was our dear bed. I made coffee in the living room and invited her to sit down. She agreed, sat down, and, sobbing, began to read me a long speech about how much she loved me and how sorry she was that she had made a terrible mistake and would never make it again, if I could only forgive her. She promised to work less at the print shop, spend all weekends with her family, never go to my mother's house for parties and dinners without me, and wanted us to have another child. I answered her, 3 weeks ago you could have saved our marriage with those promises, but today, after what you've done since then, it's too late. I'm sorry, Lizette, but there is no future for us anymore. She began her litany again. I let her continue, and when she had finished, asked, "You must think I'm a complete idiot if you think I swallowed your lies about Tommy, a 30-year-old twat who spent his weekends in the company of a disgusting old bitch like your mother." She didn't say anything, so I continued. "You're a very beautiful woman, Lizette, so I can't blame him. But I do blame you for being such a bloody cheap whore that you let him ruin our marriage and make our child very unhappy. Why, Lizette? Why? Was I such a bad husband that you had to have fun with that bloody arsehole? You weren't my first or best choice, but I married you when you needed me. And I even fell in love with you, Lizette. I have been a faithful husband to you until this very moment." She sobbed, "It's not your fault. I never stopped loving you. You are my one true love. But I know you slept with many other women and I had no other man but you. I'm sorry that I couldn't resist the temptation to do it with only one man, and I can promise you that I won't have to do it again." I replied, "However, now that you got what you wanted, I hope you're happy. At least your bloody mother should be very happy. She got what she wanted the whole time we were together. Please make her even happier by telling her that I don't care what you did because thanks to your cheating, I got my freedom and married a woman who really loves me. Don't you realize that you ended our marriage that Friday before midsummer, when I begged you to spend the weekend with your family and you chose to go and entertain Tommy at your mother's house? Did you really think I'd agree to be a bloody cuckold? The only reason I didn't kick you out of the house right now is because I needed proof of your infidelity so I could get rid of you without paying you anything at all. Don't forget that I even offered you a fair divorce, but to my surprise, you refused. An intelligent woman like you should have realized that I would never agree to be a penniless cuckold husband to a whore wife. I didn't want a divorce then and I don't want one now because I love you. Of course, I realized that the baby had told you about Tommy and you suspected something. But I never thought you'd have proof. I regretted the affair and promised myself that Tommy would be my first and last affair, but I decided to fulfill that promise as Tommy and I had planned. A night with him at our house was to be the grand finale, the very last with him and my last cheating affair of my life. To be honest, I was glad it was over, and I can't deny that your behavior after that Friday made me think about the problems I had created for our marriage. I began to fear the worst when you treated me like air and refused to have fun with me. So I wanted to be a good wife again and do everything I could to win your love again, to really spoil you during our week at the cottage and do everything I could to get pregnant as soon as possible and give you the baby you wanted so badly. I've even been looking for a new job. I'm afraid it's too late now. I replied, "You're right. The Friday before midsummer was your last chance. You didn't care about me then, and now, after what happened last night, we only have one possible solution." I held out the divorce papers to her and said, "Please sign them so we can do this the easy way." "What do you mean?" "Whatever you prefer, the easy way or the hard way, it will be done according to the terms of our prenuptial agreement. Keep a copy in a safe deposit box. You'll get everything that belongs to you and I'll take what belongs to me, which is pretty much everything except your clothes. I want custody of our son, but you'll be able to see him often when you have your own place. But I won't let you take him to the dragon's nest where you live now." She was very pale when she asked, "Are you saying that I have no right to get anything that belongs to us?" "Yes, the house, the cars, my stocks and bank accounts, and the drilling company are my private property. Don't forget that it was your mother who demanded that we enter into a prenuptial agreement. I worked hard and made good money. I paid for everything here, and your dear mummy only paid you pocket money, which was barely enough for clothes. I hired professionals to look into the printing business and found out what you should know by now. It'll be bankrupt by the end of the year. Your mother owes you a lot of money. You must get what she owes you before her business declares bankruptcy, or the bank will take everything. If you agree to cooperate in our divorce, I can pay for a lawyer to help you get the money. Your mother will lose it either way, so it's best for both her and you if you get it. Your mother may see this decision as a kick in the arse, but my main reason for helping you in this case is that with this money you will be able to afford to buy a decent flat where you can take our son when it's your turn. I'm thinking about our child, and you're still his mother, even after what you did to him and to me." She now began her speech about how sorry she was and how she regretted everything she had done. I interrupted her by saying, "Please remember how I begged you to stop this and stay home for one weekend with me, but you chose to go out and have fun with Tommy instead of staying home with your family. You made your choice then, and now I've made mine." Her next attempt was to tell me that Tommy never entertained her. I pressed a button on the remote and the video player came on. Lizette screamed hysterically, "Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!" I pressed the stop button and told her, "Sorry, Lizette, it's too much for a bloody husband." "Why, Lizette? Why did you do this to me? Why didn't you just tell me you wanted a divorce and you would have got much better terms than you are getting now? Why humiliate me with this jerk?" She realized the game was over and started sobbing. I continued, "What's done is done, and it can't be undone. But we can do our best to find a reasonable solution. But if that damn dragon you call mother tries to mess with me again, or stick his nasty nose in this case, the video will go on the internet for the whole town to see what a disgusting whore my ex-wife was. Do you understand?" Now she was scared and screamed, "You can't do that. What am I going to do? I have nothing left and even my job is going to hell. May I suggest that you be a good girl and take the easy route of our divorce?" Just accept the terms of our prenup and my terms without any objection. I promise to help you get your remaining salary. Please remember that you still have your big favorite Tommy. He can take care of you just like I did when you cheated on your previous boyfriend. He can't. He's married. Not for long. His wife wasn't very happy when I talked to her this morning. And at noon, when she saw some pictures and clips from my video that I emailed her, she was very angry. She promised to give it up. Good news for you, Lizette. Tommy is yours from now on, only yours. Oh my God, you must be out of your mind. How could you destroy their marriage? It wasn't hard at all. I found her phone number in his wallet that he left here last night. Have you already forgotten that the bloody arsehole had fun with my wife in the marital bed and ruined my marriage? Lottie told me that she didn't want anything from my house, and I only wanted everything in my home office, expensive music and home movies, and any artwork of any value. We decided to meet the following Saturday to share all of our family photos and videos. I let Lizette take everything she wanted. She didn't say a word about the almost new and very expensive marital bed she saw cut into pieces and brought in a pile in the driveway. She promised to pick up her things as soon as she got her own flat, and I intended to give the rest to the Salvation Army, which had a second-hand shop in town. Lizette was pleased that I had made it easier for her to set up her flat, said she was very short of money at the moment, and after some thought agreed that getting the rest of her salary was a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Lizette took the easy way out, signed the divorce papers, and I helped her load her belongings into the van. When Lizette left my house, I went straight to Lottie's, who had prepared a romantic dinner for us. It was a great evening. We were doing well, and these days it's nice to come home after work to a house filled with joy and laughter. And we are a family that has fun together on the weekends. Lottie and I expected it would take some time before the children accepted the new situation, and were delighted when the children almost immediately got used to the new replacement parent and each other's company and began to play well together. The postcard was Dan's suggestion. I agreed, and he asked his mom to buy a beautiful greeting card on which she wrote in the sweetest handwriting, "Dear friends, I must applaud you for winning the bet. You have done what every parent dreams of by persuading your only daughter to leave her good-loving husband and become a whore for a married, cheating husband. She should be very grateful to you for the rest of her life. Sincerely, your faithful friend." I mailed it to Lizette's father, who, rumor told me later in town, objected to Tommy coming every weekend to seduce Lizette, but his wife remained silent. He felt both sadness and anger as Lizette cried for hours after I left her. The card was the last straw on the poor camel's back, and he finally realized that if he had behaved like a man, he should have put an end to his wife's madness. He regretted that he had turned out to be such a coward and become a laughingstock among his acquaintances. Having had a few drinks, he plucked up courage and expressed his humble opinion to his wife. Their argument ended in a real fight, which resulted in her being hospitalized for a week and him spending the night in the police station. The day before she was discharged from the hospital, he packed his bags and left their home. Because they had no minor children, the divorce was finalized within 3 months. After Lizette took the easy way out and accepted all of my terms without objection, she did not hire a lawyer, and the divorce went through properly. I got custody of our child, but I promised Lizette that I wouldn't cause her any problems, and she could see the child as much as she wanted, up to 182 days a year when she had her own place. But I would not allow her to take the child to her mother's house or cottage. Lizette did not object to this because she had a bad relationship with her mother and had given up her job in the printing office. Her mother became furious when Lizette demanded her remaining wages, refused to pay her anything, and became furious when Lizette sued her. Lizette won the case, and the enforcement service managed to get her money 2 weeks before the print shop went bankrupt. The bank objected, but Nicholas found her a good lawyer who persuaded the bank to withdraw its suit. Tommy's visit to my house on the occasion of his affair with Lizette did not last long, a busy and, at first, pleasant time that soon turned into a terrible nightmare for him. After I caught him in my bed and he drove unclothed from my house in his Volvo, he was caught by traffic police officers watching for drunk drivers returning home from parties. Lizette and he celebrated the happy ending to their love story with a nice dinner with my best Rioja wine and cognac. He, completely unclothed, was taken to the police station for a blood test. One of Lizette's friends told me later that it had come to her attention that he had been fined and stripped of his driving license for 2 years. His wife did what she had promised. She came home, left him, and filed for divorce. She now works for the UN in Geneva, Switzerland, where she lives with an Italian colleague she met while working for the UN in Kosovo. Tommy tried to work out his personal problems with Dr. Booz, which caused him to have to take time off work. He never met Lisette again and never returned her many calls when she desperately tried to talk to him. He had made promises to take care of her if she had problems in her marriage. Now she learnt the brutal truth. All his talk was just talk, and she had been so naive that she believed everything he told her. Eventually, she realized what a tragic man he really was and abandoned all her attempts and hopes for a happy future with him. The extra money from the printing business allowed her to buy a flat in a good neighborhood, and she had no trouble finding a new job. Although we cooperate very well because of the baby, we never talk about anything personal. Lisette is a very beautiful woman and not a bad choice now that she is free of her mother's influence. So I'm a little confused as to why she's still not dating. Lottie and I got married just after my divorce was finalized. We sold both of our old houses and bought one together. She's pregnant now, and I think we're a pretty average family for our time with 3 kids, each with their own parents. But we don't care because we are a happy family. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.